Hey, this is the Backyard Archer. We're going to go over some basics of form, archery in general, just some stuff to help beginners out. This is very basic stuff, not meant for people who have been doing it for years, just people who want to start out. We're going to go over the bow, some arm guards, finger tabs, and today I'll be shooting my Frank Marco Eagle. Absolutely love this. It is a glassback hybrid. It's a beautiful, beautiful bow made of a lot of different woods that I can't really pronounce. I'll list them below anyway, but this one is handmade. But I'm using a plastic arm guard today and a leather finger tab that has two different parts to it. So generally, when you shoot a bow, you want to wear an arm guard for the first few times just to make sure that you don't have a gigantic welt on your arm. Now, finding the perfect spot to place it is a little tricky. Usually I put it right where my forearm is bulging out the farthest when I'm gripping the bow, but that may not be where the string hits. If your string is closer to where you're gripping, it's going to slap closer to your wrist. So it depends on where your string is and where you need to place your arm guard. Now, you can use a leather arm guard, you can use an aluminum arm guard, you can use a whole host of different arm guards. It's just finding one that's comfortable for you. Being in North Carolina, it gets really, really hot all the time. Right now, it is October, and it's still 75, 80 degrees out today. So wearing a leather arm guard is a little bit much. So I have this plastic breathable one. It's only about $10, $15. They are very comfortable. I really like them. When I'm shooting with a sweatshirt on, I can put it right over it if I need to hold my sleeve where it needs to be. But just find something that you're comfortable with and it'll work for you. I recommend a little bit thicker leather because sometimes if you're shooting a higher poundage bow or first time shooting a bow, it's going to sting a little bit if you have a very thin leather arm guard. You want a little bit thicker. Now when it comes to finger tabs, this particular one is one that was customized for me a little bit with this little notch here, so when I'm drawing on the arrow, my fingers don't get pinched together. This just helps me be a little bit more comfortable. This one still is getting broken in, so this leather here just needs to be oiled just a little bit so it slips and doesn't crack as much. But finding one that's comfortable for your hand is very important. Some people use gloves, the three-fingered archery gloves, or you can use finger tabs that have a lot of slits in them, so it just kind of slips through your fingers and helps protect your fingers just as well. And if you really want to go all natural, you can shoot without a finger tab or anything, but trust me, you're not going to shoot a whole lot the first few times without a finger tab. It helps immensely. Now, picking a bow that you feel comfortable drawing and is not super expensive off the bat. When you start archery, you don't want to go all out and purchase everything before you know what's comfortable for you. Get a bow. You can get them at Cabela's. You can get them online. You can get a whole host of different ones. I personally like recurve and longbows. I have a compound. I enjoy shooting it, but I'm not necessarily practicing with it all the time because it has a sight. You have a release. You hold the bow differently. There's a lot of things that are different between traditional and compound shooting. Today I'm just going over traditional. So when you're holding the bow with a compound, you can turn your wrist and you don't really have to hold on to it. You can go like this and just kind of hold on it, so when you release, it just falls right in your hand. With longbow and recurve, you have to grip it a little bit differently. With a U-core longbow like I have inside, that one I have to grip pretty hard because that one actually kicks a little bit. This one has almost no kick due to the design. It is very nice, it's very quiet. But just finding one that's a lower draw weight, depending on your frame, your build, and just what you're comfortable shooting. 45 pounds is huntable. You can take that to most states and you don't have to worry about them saying that your bow is too weak. I'm from New York originally, and they have 35-pound draw weight and you can shoot whatever you like. But don't go super high on the draw weight. You don't need a 50, 60, 80-pound bow off the bat. If 30 pounds is way too light for you and it's not enough, go higher. Generally, if you can row it is the easiest way I can put it. If you go to the gym and you know what a row is, you can draw that weight super easily. That's a good poundage for a bow. Like I can do 45-pound rows all day if I want to. Not necessarily all day, but a while. But just find a bow that is comfortable for you to shoot, that you like, and that will work for you. Now moving on to actually shooting the bow, drawing it, holding it, there's a couple of different ways to start out. So you don't have to grip it like a vise. You can have a fairly relaxed grip on the bow. If you grip it too hard, this is what's going to happen. It's either going to go straight into your arm and just ride your arm guard the whole way, or if you grip it too hard, the bow is going to kick forward. So if you draw and you're gripping it really hard, your bow hand is going to end up like this. And the bow is moving as you're releasing, so it's not going to be as consistent downrange. You want the bow to pretty much stay where it is. It's going to kick just a little bit because you're releasing tension in your body, but you don't want it to end like this. You don't want your front hand to fall super far, but we'll get into that second part in a little bit. You can grip it fairly light. When you draw, when you're drawing, you can essentially let go with your fingers. When you draw, when shooting traditional archery, there are two main different ways to hold your arrow or hold your string. So there's split finger, which is one above, two below, your pointer finger, your ring finger, and your middle finger, like this. This is what this is for. There's a little split right there. You put that around there, and then you can draw. Or you can do 3 under. Now 3 under, you can string walk, basically meaning that you can walk down to adjust for your elevation, your drop of the arrow, and your distance. I personally don't shoot that way. I like instinctual shooting, so I don't aim. But when I draw, you'll see that my hand stays like this before I start drawing. The reason for that is because if I start like this and I start drawing back, there's no tension keeping this arrow on the rest. If I do this, I'm torquing the string just a little bit and torquing the arrow just a little bit to keep it on that rest so it doesn't slide off and I don't have to keep my finger over this when I'm actually shooting. Because if you keep your finger over this, you can risk injury to your finger and risk being inaccurate with your shot. Now, when I shoot, of course, I'm going to keep my grip the way I need to, a little bit loose, not too tight. I'm going to let it sit in my hand so I'm not torquing the bow, anything like that. I'll draw back with an open hand, and then I'm always going to start my hand perpendicular to the string. That's just the way, or perpendicular to the arrow is better. It's just the way I've always done it so it doesn't come off the string. And I'm going to anchor, I'm going to count to 2, and then I'm going to release, and my hand's going to slide back. 1, 2, and voila, my hand slid back, my hand didn't shoot out this way. It's going to just push into your wrist. If you have a straight arm, you don't want it to be locked out. You want a slight bend, and you can turn your wrist just a little bit so it goes out like that, not super far, but you can just let it sit in your hand and then hold on to it just lightly, and then you can release. Now, I didn't hold tension in my left arm, my arm dropped quite a bit. That's what goes next. When you draw, you basically imagine pinching your shoulder blades together. You're going to be drawing like this, but you're not going to put your chest out. You don't need to. It's not necessary. So think of when you're doing basically like delts. You're going back and you're pinching your shoulder blades together. It's kind of what you do here. Not as much arm muscle per se, but you just want to keep your front hand steady, because if you move it around, of course, it's not going to be very accurate. And when you draw back, you want to focus on back tension. Just kind of pull back to what's comfortable, and voila. But when you're drawing back, when you come back, the most important thing is finding your anchor point. Your anchor point is going to be, one second, it's going to be this part of your hand in between your thumb and forefinger. And you're going to anchor it right on your jaw, right underneath your ear, in front where your jaw comes back. That way, it's in the same spot every single time. And depending on how you like to shoot, I personally, when I do this, I also put my pointer finger right on the corner of my mouth. It's just habit over time. I've kind of done it and I can't really break it. But it works for me. And with my big nose, I have to turn my head. Otherwise, I'm going to take the end of my nose off all the time. So for that to be comfortable, I kind of have to, instead of standing completely perpendicular to target, stand off just a little bit to the left. Because if you're like me and you have a big nose, you kind of need to turn just a little bit so your face is right at the target and the bowstring just misses your nose. So when you draw, you're going to find your anchor point right there, and then release. Now, I personally have shoulder issues in my left one, so holding my bow hand still a little difficult for me. I'm working back up to it. Haven't shot in a little while, so I have to get back to it. But having consistent form and form shooting like this, you don't have to be very far from the target. You just have to be an arrow length away. And just practicing your form is very important, because if your form isn't good, then your consistency is not there. Therefore, your accuracy is not going to be there. Now, when you release from your anchor point, you don't want your hand to come forward. You don't want it to come out. You want it to kind of slide backwards, kind of like recoil. So like if you release, think about slapping yourself in the face. It's going to slip right out of your hand. You don't want to just pluck the string, because then it's going to go off to your left. You just kind of want it let it slide out. Let's try that again. Just let your hand slide back. Now if I slow this down, my hand is going to shoot out, but my wrist isn't going to move out. My hand is just kind of going to pop around the string. Let's try this again. Anchored, waiting a second, coming back. I'm guilty of it. I shoot way too quickly a lot of the time. So what I tell myself in my head is anchor, 1, 2, as long as I've got my sight picture where I want it to be, I release. If not, I let it back down and I do it again. With traditional archery, you don't want to hold it back too long, because unlike a compound bow, you don't have that relief once you get to the end of your draw. In a compound bow, you might be holding 10-15% of the amount of weight that you originally started drawing back. On this, it just gets harder as you draw back on a lot of the bows. So, focus on where you want to shoot. Bring your hand up, draw back, focus on back tension, your anchor, your grip, and then release, and see how my hand slid back? That's the way you want it to come back. You don't want it to go all the way back. You don't want it to come out here. You don't want to let down before you release. You just want to release the tension. And your hand's going to slide back. Now I'm just going to do a couple of instances without saying anything. Now, form shooting that close with multiple arrows isn't the best idea, I'll admit, but if you do more than one and it goes in the exact same spot, that's usually pretty consistent form, unless you've moved your hand or changed something. Generally, you just want to do form shooting with one arrow if you're this close, that way you don't damage your arrows. These might look like wood, but they're actually carbon. These are uncut shafts. These are hunting arrows. They're 400 grains up front, and then just, it's forward of center. I can go into depth, like in depth about that, but these are hunting arrows. I don't necessarily hunt, but these are These are the ones that I've had for a long time, and I've always shot them with this weight, or this weight. But I'm just going to go over everything one more time. I'll let you go. Don't grip the bow like a vice. Find a comfortable arm guard for you that you can shoot with, and you don't have to worry about it either hurting you, hurting the bow, or just not being comfortable. Find a bow that isn't super expensive up front. You don't want to get anything that's not find stuff at a very good price that's not very expensive. And then find a finger tab that fits you well and a type of release that works for you. There are other versions of shooting that you can do and how you'd like to. Kind of like if you want to do like a release on this, you can do it. I don't recommend it. It kind of ruins it, for me at least. I do instinctual shooting, so I'm not aiming. I'm just using my form and the fact that I've shot that before to get my distance and stuff like that. If I'm hunting or I'm going to a new range or something like that, I will use rangefinder to find out exactly how far it is, so I kind of have an estimate of where I need to be. But I'm not string walking, which is going farther and farther down the string, depending on the distance, and aiming down the arrow. I haven't shot that way. My brother shoots that way. He loves it. He's very accurate. I just personally like instinctual shooting a little bit more. Thank you for joining me today at the Backyard Archer. If you have any questions or comments, shoot them in the comments section below. I'm going to put a little bit of a description of the bow below, but I am going to be doing a video on this bow soon. I just need to find a little bit more time to do it. Thank you. Have a good day.